Hi, my name is Greg Soto, and if you use spreadsheets a lot, you'll come across examples where one spreadsheet of raw data uses information from another. Vlookup replaces manual work by automating what would take up normally quite a bit of time by reviewing data in separate areas, and when it finds a match, inserts the data into a cell. Here's what we'll be covering today. What is Vlookup? How Vlookup works? How does the data have to be organized? We'll go through some quick steps, and I'll show you a few examples. So Vlookup is a formula in Microsoft Excel that is used to bring information to a designated cell from a separate spreadsheet, a different tab in the same spreadsheet, or just a different part of the same tab in Excel. What it does is it compares data in vertical columns, which is the way that most data is stored in a spreadsheet, and looks for data matches. What it needs is that it requires at least one field that is an exact match in both areas being looked up. When to use it? It's when related data isn't available in another area of a spreadsheet, and when there's a lot of data that needs to be looked up. Here's an example problem. I have a spreadsheet with employee records, but no manager information. I have a separate spreadsheet that does have an alignment of employees and their manager. How do I reconcile the two? So here's a quick look at what we're looking at. On the left-hand side, I've got the advisor full name and the advisor ID, but I'm missing team leader and the employment date. On the right side is my employee worksheet that shows their manager and their date of employment. So without having to go line item by line item and manually typing in each field, I'm going to use Vlookup. So Vlookup requires the information to be stored in a certain way. First and foremost, the data has to be located and organized in vertical columns. So you see at the top we've got advisor ID, advisor full name, team manager, and date of employment. And the information is stored in columns top to bottom. You'll also need to know in how many columns over the lookup data is from the data that's being matched. So from our example here, we're looking at advisor full name and team manager, and it's just basically for team manager, it's just the second column over. When we're looking at advisor ID, comparing it to date of employment, we can see that it's 4 columns over. So before we start this, we're going to make sure that we put the cursor in the right spot. So for example, for team leader, we're going to select the field where it's right next to Tamara Williams in this example, because that's where we want the team leader information to be populated at. Next, we're going to look at the formula tab to use the lookup formula in the formula bar. Now, if you don't see the formula bar, make sure that you go to the View tab and have the formula bar checkmarked. Once you've done that, you'll see the formula bar where I'm showing the green arrow with the f of x here, and you'll be able to click on that. This will basically bring up the formula wizard. For the first time that you're using Vlookup, you're going to make sure that you want to select the category of all, and then use the scroll bar to go all the way down until you see Vlookup. Once you find it, click on Vlookup and select OK, or just double click on Vlookup. Next, you'll see the function arguments, which is basically like a small wizard for this formula that we're going to be able to use. Now you notice there are 4 categories. There's the lookup value, which is the data that is matching in both search areas. The table array is the area where you want to search. The column index number is the number of columns over that contains the data that you need. And the range lookup. Now we're going to always use false. It's basically only 2 options, either true or false. What false means is that you want exact matches. So we don't want something that says, for example, if we're looking for Tamara Williams, to find a match that's close to it, say Tyra Williams, that's kind of close. If you use true, it'll go and take a look and say, well, I couldn't find Tamara, but I found another something that was similar and looked it up. But we're using exact matches. So for us, the range lookup will always be false. So this is what a completed function argument looks like. You notice that as you selected items, that the examples were populated. You can see that in the green arrows where we've got Tamara Williams. You can see our table array was populated when we do our selection. We notice that our team leader was in column 2. We used false. And it's giving us an example that, hey, if we do this now, William Wilson is going to be the returned value. Once you've got it, you hit OK. And you'll see that our data populated. Now, because we're looking at so much data, you'll want to be able to quickly populate the rest of the fields by either dragging down the formula. So you'll want the little double arrow here, and I'll kind of highlight it here, and you'll see a better example of it once we go over to the example. Or you can just double click in that same area, but it's going to be right at the corner area. So here's 2 examples. We're going to look it up by name, and then we'll look it up by ID. So you notice here I've got my 2 spreadsheets open. On my left-hand side, I've got the data where it's missing, looking for team leader and employment date. And I've also got it over here where the actual staff list shows the advisors' names and their management. So let's go ahead and do the first VLOOKUP. So we've placed or selected the correct field where we want the data to populate. We're going to come up here and go to our insert function. We're going to go in now and look up VLOOKUP from our list. Select it and hit OK. Now here's where it gets pretty easy when you use the selector. So the lookup value that's the same in both spreadsheets is the name. So we're going to go ahead and click on the name, Tamara Williams. And you'll see that it actually populates just a cell letter, which is NA3. The table array is the area that we want to look at the information. So we're going to switch over to our staff list. And we're going to highlight the full columns because we're not exactly sure where the information is at in this area. And we've got quite a bit of values to look up. So you can see that it highlights the active staff list, columns B and C. Now we know that the team manager's name is in the second column. And again, our range lookup is going to be false. We'll type those both in. And we'll hit OK. And you can see that William Wilson is returned. Now this is what I'm talking about, where it fills a lot of data. If you can look in this here, I've actually got 938 specific fields that need to be filled in. To do that manually would take basically all day. So I'm going to highlight this area, and I can drag it down, or I can double click. And it's complete. You can see that the data was populated in all 938 cells. We'll do it again, except for we'll try for employment date. Once again, we're going to insert our function. Now we've used VLOOKUP before, so we're going to select most recently used this time, and you'll see that it's there as a shortcut. And hit OK. This time we're looking for the advisor ID. Our table array is going to be a little bit different because in our staff list, advisor ID is in column A, and our date of employment is in column D. We're going to highlight all the columns, A, B, C, and D. And since we went over 4 slides, or 4 columns, insert the number 4, and select false. And there you go. Employment data is populated. We're going to double click. And you'll see that we've populated the date of employment for all of these users. Now sometimes you'll notice that there's an NA error. And that can be caused by a couple of different reasons. Caused by spaces or inconsistencies in the data. No matching data found in the defined search area. If it's off even by a single character like in spelling, it's not going to find the data. Or there's a formula entry error. So let's take a look at some of these errors that we saw in our data. Matthew Hollis is returning an NA for both team leader and employment date. And we know this is because he's not in this active list. So if I sort this data and look for Hollis, where his name would be right around this area, and so he's not listed here. And how do we know that? It's actually on a different list. He is not on our active employee list. So when we're looking for the Vlookup, it's not going to actually be able to find him. So that's why we're getting the NA error. Now that doesn't mean anything is wrong, but you can filter those specific areas and just correct them by adjusting the search area to the tab or the area where the information is actually stored. I hope you're able to find and follow along with this tutorial for using the Vlookup formula. It's very basic and simple and should help you save quite a bit of time. Thank you.